Hello, hello. Spam, eh? Blame Martin. Where is he? Well, I'm going to talk a bit about automation and try and make a call for finding another way to use technology that completely avoids that kind of activity. Life after data. I wrote the title before I even thought about what to write about, and I got a bit stuck. And so what you're about to hear is a ramblings of lots of weird ideas, some possibilities, and possibly things I don't really know a lot about, so you can heckle me back. These buttons work. How to cook a robot. Hello. That comes next. I have a bit of a weird background. For 15 years I've been doing digital media projects, these kind of brands. It ranges from collaborative sitcoms to virtual reality nightclubs, archaeology online projects, even Adidas set up a whole social media agency. I have a checkered past. And recently I had to start looking through all this and try and make sense of 15 years of odd projects, looking at the technology, where the common themes were. I couldn't see it. Stuff changes, technologies die off, but the strongest thing in all the projects was storytelling. Wrong way. Storytelling has always been the dominant technology in the projects. Storytelling is a technology. I think we overlook this. Many of the projects you're involved with, I imagine, are telling stories, but actually the technology you're using is the story, or rather it creates stories. So this is the project I've been working on for a while. Actually, it's the technology I invented with Rob Myers about 3 years ago. It's called Weavers. Weavers.com is where they live, and it's an odd service, always odd to explain. Even when you experienced it, it's why. The idea is that you fill in a profile, a bit like a Facebook profile or any social network. You're filling out a profile for a fictional character, or perhaps you want to fill out a profile of yourself with slightly different tastes. Then what happens when you hit the update button? The bot creates its own blog, and then it starts looking around the area. So if you put a bot in Berlin, near your house, it will take a stroll looking for the things that it's interested in. You programmed it with. You basically fill it with ingredients of tag words. And it will blog the location, and will blog photographs from the area, videos, music, color palettes. Basically anything that other people have shared in the area, it will go and find, make sure it's relevant, and then post it to the blog. Now it's very simple. It's a system where the keywords are technically gaming web services. There's not a lot of intelligence in Weavers. They're basically a collection of bits of data points and then searching through web APIs to try and find what's relevant to them. The technology is beautiful. It's on lovely big cloud servers. It's running all the day long. It blogs for you. But it has weird psychological effects. The idea of something that isn't quite alive or dead, that's full of information, having the actions of a human. So this is a Weaver. It's a data visualization of the keywords, the stuff it's finding. It would have started off with 3 or 4 nodes and grown. We generate this with Gephi. It's a lovely bit of software, it's Gephi. And this Weaver was caught around by a compositor. What we do is we track where it is, get an image of the location, do the data visualization, animate it for fun. And we start seeing invisible robots in the streets. Now this thing's actually blogging away photographs. I'm sure it's checked in at the station. But it's very curious that that's something that can be animated and wandering around. We can't see it. Now, you all live like this. I'm sure you've heard of the term filter bubble. It's, again, a byproduct of so many search engines, or recommendation engines, perhaps the best described at. You get stuck in a filter bubble. You start Googling the things that you're interested in. Facebook picks up on your preferences. And you kind of get stuck. because they're recommending things to you because they're trying to be more clever than you are. It's quite hard to break out. All we've done is replace you with a bot system. Now, we did a little experiment. It's about 2011. We created 40 characters from Alice in Wonderland as weavers. So we had someone sit down, go through all the novels, take the keywords for each character, and create 40 of these characters, and just let them run across Berlin. We had some synchronization, so Alice, Hatter, and the mouse would meet at Cafe Marx about 3 o'clock and have a cup of tea together. But now and again, Alice or mouse would be late. So they weren't always on time. They weren't always truly synchronized. It wasn't completely tight. And that's the beauty of it. It's nice and fuzzy as they explore the city. The images are their avatars caught on layer and then passed through Instagram. So it's taking photographs of bots in the street. They're not there, but we can show they were. And to prove that all these things are different, these are the heat maps to these weavers, these Alice in Wonderland weavers, as they run around town. They're world building, technically. Little fictional characters of software building their own little world, mapping their own Berlin. But there's a bit of a problem. When you've got 40 characters, it's really hard to keep track of them. In fact, it's impossible. If you try following 40 bots, you're not going to keep close tabs on them. In fact, they become overwhelming. And there's a reason for this. There's a chap called Robin Dunbar, Oxford Uni, and he's, quite a while ago, he made the point that every human being can only have 150 relationships at one time. And this breaks down into family, friends, I call vocational and other. These are my terms, not his. He normally calls it band 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3% of your social network or your group of 150 friends will be your family. Friends, vocational colleagues get bigger. So when you're dealing with bot systems online, the characters you don't really know, they're going to sit in the other section. Now, this is a hard limit. It's a hard limit because of biology. The limit of 150 relationships is based on the size of the neocortex. And you can see from the diagram top right, it scales with other animals. I think you'll see man, woman up the top there, but right down to mouse. Size of the brain equals the size of your social gathering as a species. But this non-linear equation is also found in the bottom diagram, which is scales of cities and the average number of gas stations or pet shops you'll find in each city. There's a power law to it all. But nevertheless, you can't break the 150. I caught up with Robin a few weeks ago, purely by chance. It's amazing. I'm a big fan of his work. And I was asking him about the bots and said, look, we've got all these bots running around. We've noticed that they mean a lot more when we know their location, rather than just spam bots where you don't. He goes, that's probably true. But he said you can have dead or alive things in your 150 set of relationships. And that kind of led to the conversation, so what kind of non-human things do you have relationships with? Cats and dogs, pets, etc. But I'm far more interested if it's possible to have a relationship with software, hardware, phones, technologies. Now, we did a little experiment about a year ago. This chap, John Ronson, he's a very, very good journalist, gonzo journalist, never lets the truth get in the way of a good story. And he was interviewing some guys at MIT about bots. And he sent me the article and said, look, he's not really getting into it, so a bit cheeky. I took his Wikipedia page, pushed it into a Weaver, and created an alter version of him. He went massively mental over the whole thing, and quite rightly. He thought his identity had been stolen. He thought his life was over. I got accused of stealing his soul. And when someone accuses you of stealing their soul, you've got to ask yourself, well, is he making fun of the situation, or can he not describe how he's feeling about this? And it's very much the latter. The videos are on YouTube, and they are brutal. I really did get a kick for it. But it got very curious. It's like the guys who, WordPress, they basically invented spam for blogs, by the way, their system. So they put ASCII.NET to try and solve it. So I feel kind of obliged to try and solve technology as far as activity streams, so people don't get harassed like that. It's the way that social networks are set up. It allows that activity. So perhaps we're doing something wrong with our basic technologies for web infrastructure, for communications, marketing. We may just got it all completely wrong, but we're faffing around with it anyway. Can we turn it another way? So back to the relationship with non-human things. Robin said you can have a relationship with dead things, non-things. And there's no research on it. And he passed a message on. If anyone wants to fund the research, he'd be happy to do it. Or something like that. But it's getting curious that marketing taps into this stuff as well. The lifestyle brands will go for the friends and vocational. No brand ever goes for the family sector. It's too tightly closed. And that's the kind of problem that John Ronson had when we created an older version of him. It was really in that blue segment, and it's very uncomfortable. So what the future is of having relationships with things online that aren't human. I mean, there was the woman who married, is it the Great Wall of China or the Berlin Wall? Anyway, but having a relationship with non-things is very curious. So I took Robin's research and played around with it a bit. And it's something that Genevieve Bell at Intel said. Social media is suspiciously social. It sounds a bit obvious, but it is, isn't it? So I did a simple mapping out of group size versus attention. Of course, you'll spend more time paying attention to family and friends rather than the other 100 in the background. And where it crosses over, I think, is where Twitter's activity is. Right between the social and the vocational crowd. They're the people you tend to retweet, not family or people you don't really know. So in a way, we're all playing into a natural system which they exploit. It's suspicious. We may have got technology wrong. We keep getting the buttons wrong. And something else I've noticed, and again, there's no research on this, it's just an observation. There are 4 things for a healthy life: mating, health, navigation, and growth. And they seem to relate to the 4 things, 4 buttons on the iPhone. The Samsung obviously copy, but I like to try a little experiment. I presume a few of you got an iPhone on you. If you have an iPhone, could you stand up, please? Please. Hey, thank you. So that's about 80, 90%. So if your iPhone, you're going to need to check this. If your iPhone has those 4 default icons, whichever version of iPhone you're running, basically phone, mail, Safari, and a media player, if you've got that, you can sit back down again. More than I thought. If you've got 3, you can sit back down again. 2. Wow. 1. Who's left standing? You have 4 completely different icons. Folders. That's cheating. All back up again. You can test for yourselves. If the applications you've exchanged for the dock are similar to it, it's because you're feeding off those 4 things. I quite like and despise the way that Apple get that in. I mean, if anyone's ever found any design research on why they choose those 4, but they seem to correlate. And I'm sure Samsung will copy. But the reason why these things turn up is that those who work in the design and UX business are making it very hard for us to break away from other ways. As I've done 15 years of user-centric design, for branding and communications, it's always about making the customer or converting a person to a user, literally, into a customer. And every UX person does pathways for their users. And it's always based upon this. It's the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell, the monomyth, the system that every Star Wars, Hobbit, and glossy blockbuster movie out of Hollywood uses. We just fall into the same process of how to design things. The hero's journey wasn't designed for software. It's been appropriated. It was designed to build worlds. There's something about using a technology such as storytelling like this to try and design interfaces rather than build worlds. I think this is where things start getting very weird. The lake fallacy basically means you can't have all the data. Whatever system you've got, whatever application, you're always going to be missing something. And this is why a Roomba and Iron Man have the same problem. A Roomba can never actually see the room. Doesn't know where it's done or cleared everything. I'm sure it can go on infinitely, but it's still going to miss a bit. The same with Marvel superhero. You know, he's constantly upgrading his suit. He can never be perfect. So you're chasing this technology. But meanwhile, there's a little difference I've noticed. The Roomba is a product that lives in the world doing things. The other one is a fictional character developing a world. Object, showing what a world looks like. Fictional world, showing what objects look like. They're using the same technical storytelling. Now, I'm not quite sure where this is going, but does everyone know Dali's piece, the telephone? Objects that double bind themselves. Fictional world, object, and an object in the middle which refuses to reveal what it's about. And it has something to do with this effect, the Uncanny Valley. Quick show of hands. Does everyone know what the Uncanny Valley is? Not enough of you. The Uncanny Valley is, in short, when people try to design robots and try to make them human-like, you get this big plunge. It freaks people out. I'm sure you've all seen it. Robots that look a little bit trying too hard to look human, but don't make it. I find that a fascinating area, because that's where really weird ideas come from. But Ben Bashford in London, lovely guy, great designer, he pointed out that designers take from the Uncanny Valley and tame products on the upward climb. And if that's true, then I think movies go the other way, into feral, wild worlds. So this is speculation, but it feels kind of right. Storytellers go up the climb, trying to get the perfect world, whereas product developers are trying to tame things to sit in the world. So we're going to be a bit weird with the language. Your interfaces you design for your applications are based upon allegories. They try to represent something you're trying to give to the customer, but they're always going to allude somewhat. Allegories technically make empty objects, whereas characters inside movies, they make worlds, to the point where characters inside story worlds are trying to solve problems which develop those worlds. It's the kind of thing that you see in any movie script. Let's start with an idea and then try and imagine the rest of the world to set the film. That's an interesting use of storytelling, because it's problem solving. But when storytelling is used to design interfaces, it becomes recursive. More and more and more interfaces. It regresses. So weavers, our little web robots, are living allegories who build worlds, like the Alice in Wonderland characters I showed you. They're going out collating data as a fiction, and then trying to define the world around them. And that's the weirdness of data. It's trying to make you imagine what's going on. It's trying to build things, but it's all psychologically bizarre. So I think I'm getting more and more interested in things like this, Luddic interfaces. I did have a video for this, but it really wasn't. It's a long video. Could you all go and check out Noisy Jelly afterwards? And what it is a really interesting way of thinking about interfaces and objects and building worlds. What this little project was, where they get jelly molds and they put a sugar solution in which conducts electricity. Then it sits on a flat, and when you touch it, it creates a circuit. So you play them like musical instruments. Let's have a think. They're creating jelly-based robot things as fun, as entertainment, as objects around us. That's a little bit more fun than a piece of glass you have to keep touching. But pretty much the same ideas. When I normally talk about bots and alter realities, I bring this image out, and I haven't quite worked it out either. There's something about information at your fingertips and characters that create worlds for you. It's playful. There's a toy shop thing. They're cheap. But can you put electronics in these things? Could there be little RFID things? Could there be radio things? You'll be taking companions with you. So at this point, it's trying to think away from bots into how do you put bot-like mentalities on every finger? Literally, digital media. Now, I'm not sure whether this is a trend or not at all. Maybe just my mad imagination. I'm getting curious about things that aren't digital, aren't connected to the internet. How we can make things which are robotic, or robots which aren't electronic. This advert broke last Christmas in the UK. Tesco's is a big supermarket, one of the biggest, quite a well-loved brand. And their first advert for the year was a woman walks into a shop and picks a robot up. Christmas campaign, woman goes in, buys a robot. It's a Furby. And it was for a campaign for something else, which I think most of the public missed. It's for an insurance package. But they used this robot to illustrate it. The day that people go into supermarkets to buy robots, I'm not quite sure whether it's for ingredients or it's a product. So, how many of you attended a hack day? Apart from the front row. To all the suits out there, you're aware of the hack days. Who isn't doing a hack day? Who's not running one? Who's not using their company to bring talent in? They happen at the weekends, like religious festivals. There's something about the ritual of working together to make things. I suppose the way that we've heard before this morning, getting together to make things is quite good fun. So why aren't we thinking more about rituals and making things when most of the technology we do is in an office or a lab? It's never domesticated. I think as Martin said earlier, things get interesting when they get boring. So why aren't we inventing technologies which we can use at home to make the things we want? Why is the idea of application development something you do on a computer? Why is user-centric design all about technology processing microchips on a screen? Why hasn't anyone invented a technology where we can cook a robot on a Sunday afternoon because we've got an urge and a small thing we want solving? Why can't we have single feature robots which we can knock up in half an hour in a microwave? I've got no idea what the use case would be, but the output of these things, of those activities, whether it's doing little robots or cooking a Thai green curry, there's some aesthetic somewhere in between these two. An object which has seemingly a life to it, and an object that's the output of a ritual. Nothing really sits in between the two, but nevertheless, they are both baking something, cooking something. You can extend the idea of making into any metaphor you want, but cooking seems to be a bit more fun. So, here's your design challenge for the rest of the week. Create 150 life-affirming world builders. Like the iPhone, for applications. They're life-affirming applications. You kind of need them. You need to be in contact. Most of us need to mate, check on health, find a way around. But can't we take those ideas and turn it into, God help us, something out of the fifth element? Because that's the size of the market for it. We know how the Dunbar's law breaks down against life requirements. So what are we waiting for? I have to check this guy's name. Matthew Bugatti, har.ms is his website. Or just Google, go to YouTube, silicon tentacle. He's actually printing robots out of silicone, wax, plastics. This tentacle just swerves around. It's some kind of phallic symbol. But he's just experimenting. But he's making robots out of stuff rather than making robots out of data. It's beyond it. And I really do like the idea of cooking up a robot in a pan. He's just sealing off some wax. But the approach to technology in this way, as companion pieces. DARPA have done their own silicon robot, soft-body robot. This is a robot that goes off and retrieves, helps you find a dog that finds you. It's very early days, but it's a soft robot. It changes color. It can hide. It's hydraulic. Tour Van Bellen, a studio in London, Again, amazing work. I'll put the slides up later and you can get the web addresses. But he's playing around between the relationship between human and technology and non-human relationships, amongst many other things. He's an industrial designer. But there's not a lot of data-based production going on. There's definitely storytelling going on. There's user experience. But it's quite hard to pin down exactly his approach. And these things, allows me to smoke on stage. How many of you smoke electric cigarettes? No. One at the back. I don't use them on flights. Electric cigarettes are the wrong term for these things. They're robots. They've got a little battery and a chip, and you inhale, it turns a circuit on. And there's this whole hacker culture of flavorings of cigarettes. Not with nicotine. Actually turning into a healthy thing. Pastime. It's not going to kill you. Non-database robots with life-affirming abilities. I don't suppose Justin Ratner's in the audience. No. Intel been really pushing themselves to broaden. Where do chips go? What's the application in the future of really, really small computer chips? Well, they're down to 4 nanometers, 14 nanometers, something like that. It's crazy small. And there was a slide in here, and I took it out because it wasn't going to be enough time, but Russell Davis in London said, only when ubiquitous computing will only become available when it becomes cheap enough, like a Kinder Egg, so you can fit inside a Kinder Egg. That may be true, but if we follow Bruce Sterling's spine thesis, then it's going to be large companies pumping out lots of little plastic ducts in a version of the IoT. If Intel can build anything, can we have some stuff for which we can make other things with, rather than just circuit boards, chips, soldering irons? The maker industries that are going on at the moment are brilliant, but we're a bit restricted with materials. Could Intel build us chips inside eggs so we can go home on a Sunday and whisk up a robot? Of course, a lot of this is complete and utter fiction, but that's the kind of point. Where do we go to find inspiration for making things with technology beyond the technology we have at the moment? How do we start dreaming about the technologies? How do we start thinking about use cases for ourselves with technologies that don't exist? So I sit here and I doodle, thinking about popping a couple of Intel eggs into the steamer with some silicon and pouring it out, or letting this thing crawl out. A little single-purpose jelly application that can wiggle when things need attending to. I don't know. There's a tumbler there with lots of weird things on it. So that's round about it. It's early days. But the robots are coming, people. And they got sauce. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good smoke. Thank you very much, David.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
David, by injecting story into robots, and how far can you see that they get kind of an emotional intelligence?
They don't have emotional intelligence, we do. We are the ones suffering with it. So robots are very good, particularly as you experienced this morning by the sounds of it, spam bots. Everybody goes crazy for a bit. That's their power, provoke, like any character in a film. Should we expect anything more than a film from Iron Man? We don't expect him to turn up and have a cup of tea with us. Mm-hmm. They're there as allegories for us to interact with.
So you would say also the weavers that you build, they are kind of an extended part of your personality, of your cognitive resources, or?
I think some people use it that way. They do create versions of themselves, put them in different locations or just around themselves, so that they don't have to do the social media thing. They can just have it automated. The nice thing about weavers, and I'm not here to plug it, but the longer you follow it, you see the emerging patterns. You see a personality come through. I think someone tweeted last night to the Weavers account, they're just overjoyed about having something fixed, because they want to see it every day. It becomes a companion, and you do get into strange psychological territory where, there's a Japanese corporation who makes these sea lions for the elderly, so they can just stroke and feel this thing, and feel it breathing. But they made them stubborn as well. So you're trying to stroke this thing and it'll turn its head away from you. It would just force you to react to it again. And if you cute it up a bit, then it go, oh, okay, you can hug me now. So fooling ourselves seems to be the objective, rather than expecting technology to surprise us. We want to be cheated.
Great last words. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Bausola.